Welcome back to Around the Table with Stacy Smith. We're talking about economy and the investing. And the Fed has been raising interest rates to try to tame inflation, as we've talked about. And it has said publicly that things are going to be difficult and some people are going to be losing their jobs. Well, more and more of the big companies, from Disney to the major high-tech companies, are announcing cutbacks and layoffs. So, Frank, can we expect more such announcements as the Fed continues to raise interest rates?
I would think that's a reasonable expectation. Uh, what the Fed is trying to do is reduce demand. We have inflation that's caused by cost push because we don't have enough employees. And then we have demand because everybody's working. And if you take the demand off the table, that means you take some people out of their jobs. So some of that demand goes away. And then and then maybe we won't have more jobs than we have people, which is where we were a month ago. And I believe we're still there. We still have a long way to go before this becomes a large problem. It's problematic. For example, in Pittsburgh, we lost Argo AI. There was, I think, 700 employees here. I would expect those people will not have difficulty finding a job because they are relatively highly skilled people. Where it's a problem is when it affects the construction industry, and where construction workers have skills, but they're not transferable to other industries. Whereas if you're an accountant at Argo AI and Payne Weber or not Payne Weber, they don't exist anymore. Price Waterhouse needs an accountant. You could have an opportunity there, whether you want it or not. And these people will have options because their skills are somewhat transferable.
It's a fine line that the Fed is trying to walk, yes, it knows it's going to create some unemployment, but what's the right level and when to take the foot off the interest rate pedal and allow the economy to slide into a recovery mode. And they're trying to do the ease downturn and make the upturn last longer, not spike up, because right now there's still expectation. Okay, as soon as they stop, the economy is going to go back to where it is. It won't. It'll gradually recover. And that's what the Fed's trying to engineer.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead, Carrie, please.
I was going to say the real challenge that Bob is discussing is that when interest rates go up, there's a lag. You know, they go up today. We don't really economically feel the impact of that probably for at least 6 months. So that's where walking the line becomes really challenging. And when we hear about concerns of a recession next year, it's really because we're all trying to figure out what is the impact of these interest rate increases that we've seen. So I think the conversation is going to switch from interest rate increases to corporate earnings and how hard are companies actually being hit by a decrease in demand, because if it's more expensive to buy a house, you're not going to Home Depot every night for a month. What impact does that have? So it's really a challenge. And we get paid to think about what could go wrong. And my concern right now is that everyone's so maniacally focused on what the Fed is doing in interest rates that we're kind of forgetting about, well, what's the hangover going to feel like as those interest rate increases have impact.
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to go with the question I have, and that is, in relation to what Bob said as well, right now we're seeing a lot of it mainly in the big high-tech companies. I guess they're being hit because the interest rates hit them harder than just about a lot of other companies. But will the Fed want to see just a general overall reduction in employment across the country? Or is there like a set number that they might have? How might they be viewing this?
Well, I think it's also, as Frank said earlier, the real estate industry, be it construction or resale of homes, that's been hit pretty hard too. I don't think the Fed can orchestrate industry by industry reductions, but I think it'll be the general economy and the rate of price increase slowing that will give them the impetus they need to not be so harsh on the economy. But don't look for the Fed to start dropping interest rates, because that's not where we're going to end up. We're going to stabilize at a historic norm, and then the economy will gradually recover. But in the meantime, a lot of companies are going to do well. And that's where the basic blocking and tackling comes in. The analysis of the asset model you put in your portfolio. What kinds of companies and funds are you putting in your portfolio? That you have impact over. You have no impact over what the Fed's going to do. That's what Kerry said. I like that, maniacally watching what the Fed does. Maniacally watch your own portfolio and make the right choices. That's where you're going to get the best return.
If you consider, Stacy, what's happening with these interest rates, there will be winners. There are people, banks, for example, will be potentially, for a time at least, will be a winner because their spreads between what they're paying for money and what they're lending it out for will widen. And that means they'll make more money. Inflation has been good for the energy industry, for example. The war hasn't hurt it either. So there are a lot of moving parts here beyond just interest rates. But interest rates are, the money is the lubricant for the economy. And if money gets more expensive, the lubricant becomes a little more sticky.
And I do think the Fed is watching the employment numbers and really wanting to see that. I know it sounds crazy, wanting to see that unemployment number go up. And I'm not quite sure where they've landed now, but probably at about 4.5% unemployment. And really watching, and Frank made a mention of this at the beginning of the show, the employment cost index. Because as long as people are really working and getting paid more, the concern is that demand will continue to stay in the system. So I think they're taking a little bit of a broader look than just what these CPI numbers are, which is why, the market was really happy about that last week. But, we're definitely not through the woods yet.
And definitely not through the woods. I would happen to agree with you on that. One of the things, not this time, but the next time we get together, we'll have to talk about really how this is now going to start to affect earnings of companies and perhaps what kind of companies. So maybe we'll do that the next time. But we have to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.